The Great Exodus, a journey through the wilderness. In the land of Egypt, where the sun scorched the earth and the pyramids reached for the skies, lived the Israelites, a people chosen by God. They were slaves to the mighty Pharaoh, forced to labor under the harshest conditions. But God had not forgotten his people. He had a plan, and it all began with a man named Moses. Moses was a humble shepherd living in Midian when God called him from a burning bush that was on fire, but did not burn up. "Moses," God said, "I have seen the suffering of my people in Egypt. I will send you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." Moses was afraid, but God reassured him, saying, "I will be with you." With his brother Aaron as his spokesman, Moses returned to Egypt and confronted Pharaoh. "Let my people go," he demanded. But Pharaoh's heart was hard and he refused. So God sent 10 terrible plagues upon Egypt. The Nile turned to blood, frogs covered the land, gnats and flies swarmed, livestock died, boils broke out, hail destroyed crops, locusts devoured what was left, darkness fell for 3 days, and finally, the firstborn of every Egyptian family died. Only then did Pharaoh relent. "Go," he told Moses. "Take your people and go." The Israelites, numbering about 600,000 men plus women and children, left Egypt in haste. They took with them unleavened bread, for there was no time to let the dough rise. They also carried with them the bones of Joseph, who had made them swear to take him when God delivered them from Egypt. God led them with a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. He took them on a longer route through the wilderness toward the Red Sea to avoid the Philistine territory. He knew that if they faced war, they might lose heart and return to Egypt. But soon, Pharaoh changed his mind. "What have we done, letting the Israelites go?" he shouted. He ordered his chariots and army to pursue them. As the Israelites camped by the Red Sea, they saw the Egyptians approaching and were terrified. "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die?" they cried to Moses. But Moses said, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." Then he stretched out his hand over the sea, and God parted the waters with a strong east wind. The Israelites crossed on dry ground, with walls of water on either side. The Egyptians pursued them, but God threw them into confusion. He made the wheels of their chariots come off. When the Israelites reached the other side, Moses stretched out his hand again, and the waters returned, covering the chariots and the army. Not one of them survived. Safe on the other side, the Israelites sang a song of praise to God. "The Lord is my strength and my defense," they sang. "He has become my salvation." Their journey had just begun. They traveled into the desert of Shur, but after 3 days without water, they found a bitter water called Marah. The people grumbled against Moses, so he cried out to God. God showed him a piece of wood to throw into the water, and it became fit to drink. Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs and 70 palm trees, and they camped there. From Elim, they moved into the desert of Sin. The whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt," they said. "There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted, but you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death." But God heard their grumbling and provided for them. He sent quail in the evening and manna in the morning. Manna was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. The Israelites were to gather just enough for each day, but on the 6th day they were to gather twice as much, so they could rest on the Sabbath. In Rephidim there was no water, and the people quarreled with Moses. "Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst?" they demanded. Moses cried out to God, and God instructed him to strike a rock at Horeb with his staff. Water gushed out for the people to drink. Amalekites attacked them at Rephidim, but Joshua led the Israelites in battle, while Moses stood on a hill with the staff of God in his hands. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. When he lowered them, the Amalekites gained the advantage. So, Aaron and Hur held his hands up until sunset, and Joshua overcame the Amalekite army. In the 3rd month after leaving Egypt, they came to the desert of Sinai and camped in front of the mountain. God called Moses up Mount Sinai and gave him the 10 Commandments, written on 2 stone tablets. But while Moses was on the mountain, the people grew impatient. They made a golden calf and worshipped it, saying, "These are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt." God was furious, and so was Moses when he saw the calf. He threw the tablets out of his hands, breaking them to pieces. He burned the calf, ground it to powder, scattered it on the water, and made the Israelites drink it. Then he went back up the mountain to plead for mercy. God forgave them and renewed his covenant with them, giving Moses new stone tablets. The journey continued. God provided water from a rock again at Kadesh after Miriam, Moses' sister, died. The Israelites faced many battles, including defeating King Sihon of the Amorites and King Og of Bashan. They complained again about the lack of food and water, so God sent venomous snakes among them. Many died, but when the people repented, God instructed Moses to make a bronze snake and put it on a pole. Anyone bitten could look at it and live. They camped on the plains of Moab, where King Balak of Moab hired Balaam to curse them. But Balaam could only bless them because God was with Israel. Finally, they reached the edge of the promised land. Moses climbed Mount Nebo and saw the land God had promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He died there, and Joshua took over as leader. The wilderness journey was long and arduous, filled with trials and miracles. But through it all, God was faithful, guiding his people to the land flowing with milk and honey.